They say that before the great cities rose from dust, before kings and empires inscribed their victories on stone, there existed sanctuaries not built for the eyes of the common world. Places without names on maps, whose walls whispered in the language of eternity. They were neither temples nor palaces, though their stones bore the weight of both. In the shadows of mountains, in the heart of desert valleys, deep within the belly of labyrinthine caves, the mystery schools of the ancient world kindled their fires not of wood, but of spirit. To enter one was not a matter of privilege or coin. One did not simply walk into the precincts of Isis in Egypt, nor cross the silent thresholds of Eleusis in Greece, nor descend into the cryptic chambers beneath the ziggurats of Mesopotamia. A gatekeeper unseen by mortal eyes stood before every initiate, and the key was carved not from metal but from the marrow of the soul. The elders called it the second birth, a death of ignorance, so that the seed of hidden knowledge could awaken. The outer world saw nothing of these sanctuaries but their symbols, the spiral etched into temple thresholds, the serpent winding around columns, the sun disk hovering above the brow of a god carved in bas-relief. To the uninitiated, these were mere ornaments. To the student, they were the map and compass of the inner cosmos. It is said that upon crossing the threshold, the air itself changed. Time no longer dripped in the slow rhythm of clocks but unfolded in concentric rings, like ripples in a sacred pool. Torches burned with flames tinted blue by oils distilled from forgotten plants, their scent filling the corridors with a strange clarity, as if sharpening the very thoughts of the novice. Every stone had been placed with precise intention, each angle aligning to stars that had not risen in thousands of years, for the mystery schools were not bound to the present, they were anchored in the eternal cycles of the cosmos. Their architecture a frozen prayer to the constellations. The elders spoke little, their eyes, dark as deep waters, seemed to peer through skin and bone into the hidden geometry of one's being. Those who were not ready were turned away without anger, for the teachings, once heard, could never be forgotten, and to hear them before the soul was prepared was a wound that no healer could mend. And so the journey began, not with lessons or scrolls, but with silence, for in the silence, the initiate's own heartbeat became the first drum of the sacred procession, guiding them into the labyrinth within. Only then, in the quiet corridors where the breath of the ancients still lingered, would the first veil be lifted, revealing that the mysteries were not merely to be learned, they were to be lived. From here, the path would only grow stranger, for the gates ahead opened not into the world of men, but into the very architecture of the unseen. The first veil lifted not with fanfare, but with the quiet inevitability of dawn. The initiate, having passed through the silent halls, found themselves in a chamber that seemed to breathe. The walls were covered in paintings and carvings, not of battles or kings, but of patterned spirals within spirals, eyes set into the wings of birds, rivers twisting into the forms of sleeping serpents. To the untrained mind, these were decorations. To the adept, they were fragments of the great language, the tongue spoken before the Tower of Babel fractured human speech. The elder who stood in this chamber did not introduce himself. His robe was the color of aged parchment, and his face was unreadable, carved by both time and discipline. He carried no book, yet his presence carried the weight of all books. In his hand was a staff topped with a sphere of black stone, polished until it reflected every torchlight as a miniature sun. "You are not here to learn," he said, his voice low yet resonant, "but to remember." With that, he led the initiate into a narrow corridor whose ceiling pressed low, compelling the body to bow as though before an unseen altar. This was the first trial not of endurance, but of surrender. Every mystery school had its own form of this passage. In Egypt, it might be the descent into the inner chambers of the Temple of Dendera, where murals of celestial boats hinted at voyages of the soul. In Greece, the initiate might pass through the Telesterion at Eleusis, where the sacred Chican drink would later open the gates of vision. In Mesopotamia, It could be a climb up the inner stairs of a ziggurat, spiraling toward the stars as if ascending the spine of the world. Each path was different, but the essence was the same. The initiate was being drawn away from the geography of the earth into the geography of the unseen as they walked. The elder spoke in fragments, weaving threads of knowledge that would only make sense much later. He spoke of the law of correspondence, that the movement of the heavens was mirrored in the movements of the soul. He hinted at the law of rhythm, that all rises and falls and the wise move with the tides rather than against them. These were seeds, not lessons. They would take root only when the initiate's inner soil was ready. Finally, they reached a circular chamber at the heart of the temple. At its center was a basin carved from a single block of obsidian, filled not with water but with a dark liquid that swallowed light. The elder gestured toward it. "Look," he said. At first, the initiates saw nothing but their own reflection, but as they gazed longer, the reflection shifted. The lines of the face dissolved into stars, constellations spun in silence, and a faint voice, whether from within or from beyond, whispered a name the initiate did not know, yet somehow recognized. The elder placed a hand on their shoulder. "Every journey into the mysteries begins here, where you are shown not who you are, but what you are." And with that, the chamber darkened, and the basin began to ripple as though something beneath the surface was awakening. The ripples in the basin deepened until they became waves, and the darkness within seemed to swell outward, swallowing the chamber itself. The initiate did not feel the ground give way, nor the air change, yet in a breath they were no longer. In the temple they stood beneath a night sky that blazed with constellations far older than the zodiac known to men. The stars were enormous, pulsing with colors unseen by mortal eyes. Each one a living ember of thought. From the horizon rose a structure, vast and shimmering, made not of stone but of something between light and shadow. It resembled a pyramid, yet its sides were curved, folding inward like petals around a hidden heart. The elder was gone. In his place, robed figures stood in a wide circle around the initiate. Their faces were veiled, their hands extended, each holding a different object: a scroll bound in copper wire, a vessel of incense, a crystal sphere, a blade shaped like a crescent moon. One stepped forward, voice ringing like metal against stone. "You seek to walk between worlds. To do so, you must pass the three gates. They cannot be opened by strength, nor wit, nor charm, but only by the tempering of the inner fire." The first gate appeared before them, an archway formed from two monolithic pillars, one of white stone veined with gold, the other of black granite streaked with silver. Symbols danced across their surfaces, shifting as though alive. The initiate understood, without being told, that this was the gate of duality. To pass through, they would have to reconcile the opposites within the sun and moon of the mind. The serpent and the eagle of the soul. A whisper rose from the circle: "Solve et coagula," dissolve and recombine. It was the alchemist's creed, the hermetic key. The initiate stepped forward, and with each pace the pillars seemed to lean closer, as if the arch were collapsing inward. Just before they touched the threshold, a mirror appeared between the stones, reflecting not their body but every unspoken thought, every hidden desire, every unhealed wound. To move forward meant to face them without turning away. Time lost meaning in that reflection. The initiate relived the patterns of their life, the choices made in fear, the truths ignored, the powers feared to awaken. One by one, they embraced these shadows, neither justifying nor denying them, until the mirror dissolved like mist. The gate opened without a sound, and they stepped into the next realm. There, the air shimmered with heat, though no fire could be seen. A vast circle of flame ignited around them, and from within its light emerged the second gate. Unlike the first, this was no fixed structure. It was a storm of symbols, runes, and sacred geometries, spinning like a living mandala. This was the gate of language, the threshold of the great word. To pass through, one had to align the vibration of their soul with the hidden grammar of the cosmos. The robed figures began to chant in a tongue older than summer, a sequence of tones that made the air vibrate against the skin. The initiate closed their eyes, letting the sound fill them, until their own breath joined the rhythm. The mandala slowed, its symbols aligning, and an opening appeared in its center. Beyond it, they could see only darkness, and the faint outline of the third and final gate. The darkness between the second and third gate was unlike night. It was absence. No stars, no wind, not even the whisper of breath. The initiate walked forward, guided only by an instinct older than memory, until the silhouette of the final threshold took form. It was not made of stone, nor light, nor shadow. It was alive. Two colossal figures stood on either side, their bodies woven from strands of gold and onyx, their faces hidden behind masks resembling the heads of ancient beasts, one a jackal with eyes like molten amber, the other a falcon crowned with a disk of burning silver. They held no weapons, yet the power radiating from them pressed against the initiate's very bones. Between them hung a curtain woven of countless threads, each thread a living image of memory, a possibility, a destiny. The jackal spoke first, its voice echoing as though from the tombs of forgotten dynasties. You have passed through the gate of opposites and the gate of the word. Now you stand before the gate of death. The falcon's voice followed, sharp and clear as sunlight on steel. To enter the mysteries, you must die, not the body, but the self you have carried until now. That which clings to name and form cannot pass through this veil. The curtain shimmered, and the images upon its threads began to move. The initiate saw themselves as a child, running under skies they had long forgotten. They saw every triumph, every wound, every love and betrayal, each moment glowing briefly before fading into another. Then the images shifted, showing the lives they had not lived, paths untaken, faces never met, choices that could have been. A weight grew in their chest, the realization that to pass through all of it must be surrendered. Every memory, every identity, every tether to the life they knew. The elder's words from before returned like an echo. You are shown not who you are, but what you are. The robe's circle from before was gone, but the sensation of their unseen presence remained. The initiate knelt, placed their hands upon the ground, and breathed out slowly, breathing out their name, their past, their fears. One by one, the threads of the curtain dimmed, until only a single one remained. It pulsed with a light that was not of this world. Without hesitation, the initiate reached forward and stepped through. There was no sense of movement, only a sudden and total stillness. And in that stillness, they felt it, a vast, boundless field of awareness, where the self was not a drop in the ocean, but the ocean itself. It was the state the ancients called the second birth, the awakening of the immortal within. When sight returned, they were once again in the obsidian basin chamber of the temple. The elder stood before them, the black stone sphere in his hand glowing faintly. He studied them for a long moment before speaking. You have passed the 3 gates. Now the true instruction begins. The elder turned, his robe brushing the obsidian floor with a sound like wind through ancient reeds, and led the initiate into a chamber deeper still. The air here was heavier, perfumed with incense distilled from resins traded in secret across continents and ages past. The walls were curved, their surfaces inlaid with lapis lazuli and gold leaf, shimmering like a frozen dawn. This was no ordinary sanctuary, it was a map, a cosmos rendered in sacred form. At the chamber's center stood a massive circular table of black basalt. Upon it was carved an intricate design, concentric rings, each filled with symbols that danced between mathematics and art, between star maps and scripture. Tiny gemstones, emerald, sapphire, and carnelian, were set into precise points, each aligned with an invisible geometry that extended far beyond the temple's walls. This is the great pattern, the elder said, his voice low but charged with power. It is older than any kingdom, any religion. The mystery schools do not worship gods as men do. They study the architecture in which gods themselves arise. The heavens, the earth, the soul, 3 mirrors of a single truth. The initiate leaned closer, The outermost ring of the pattern was marked with the signs of the zodiac, though not as they appeared in modern almanacs. Here, the constellations were linked to ancient star names long erased from public record, names whispered in the temples of Babylon and inscribed on the coffin lids of Egyptian priests. The elder traced a finger inward to the second ring. Here lies the calendar of the great year, he explained, a cycle of 26,000 years, known to those who built the first stone circles, and to the sages of the Indus. Civilizations rise and fall upon its tides, for history is not linear, it is the breathing of the cosmos. Further inward lay the third ring, inscribed with symbols the initiate did not recognize: serpents coiled in knots, eyes embedded within triangles, spirals feeding into squares. The elder's gaze deepened. These are the laws, the hermetic principles, the ciphers that bind matter and spirit: mentalism, correspondence, vibration, polarity, rhythm, cause and effect, and generation. They are not teachings of men, but the grammar of reality itself. As the initiate studied the pattern, something strange began to happen. The gemstones glimmered brighter, their light flowing along the carved lines like water. The rings began to turn, not mechanically but as if moved by some vast intelligence, each motion aligned with the beating of the initiate's own heart. The elder did not intervene, he only watched, knowing that this was the pattern, recognizing a soul that had passed the gates. The table ceased its movement, and the elder spoke once more. Now you see why the mysteries cannot be given freely. To the unprepared, the pattern is meaningless, or worse, dangerous. But to you it will speak, and when it speaks, you will begin the journey that unites heaven and earth within your own being. A low hum filled the chamber, a resonance felt, more than heard, somewhere far above, beyond the roof of the temple and the vault of the sky itself. A star flared in silent acknowledgement. The elder turned toward a hidden passage. It is time, he said, to walk into the archives where the dead still speak. The hidden passage was narrow, its entrance sealed by a slab of granite so perfectly balanced it moved at the elder's touch without a sound. The air that drifted out was cold, carrying the faint scent of oil, parchment, and something older, mineral tang, as if the very stones exhaled the memory of millennia. The initiate followed, torchlight licking the walls, revealing inscriptions etched so finely they could be mistaken for the veins of the rock itself. These were not words in any known tongue. They were glyphs of pure idea, shapes that pressed upon the mind with meaning too vast to fit into speech. At last, the passage widened into a vast underground hall, the ceiling arched high above, its stone ribs carved into spirals and lattices, echoing the patterns of galaxies and the shells of ancient seas. Along the walls stood tall niches, each containing scrolls sealed in tubes of gold or obsidian, tablets of clay whose surfaces shimmered faintly, and codices bound in the skins of beasts no longer known to the earth. This, the elder whispered, is the archive of the first ton. They moved slowly between the shelves, for here each step was an act of reverence. The elder gestured toward a tablet whose surface was black as midnight, its symbols glowing with a faint internal fire. This was carried from the ruins of a city swallowed by the desert before the first pyramid rose. It speaks of the time when the stars were nearer, when the gods walked openly among men. He lifted a scroll bound with a strip of copper. This one was written in Atlantis, when its towers still shone like mirrors in the sun. It describes the laws of transmutation, the art of bending matter through thought, of turning stone into light and light into form. Such knowledge was sealed away because the unprepared would turn it to destruction. As they passed deeper, the initiate began to feel a strange sensation: voices, faint but insistent, brushing at the edges of thought. Some murmured in forgotten languages, others in clear tones, speaking not to the ears, but to the very marrow. The elder noticed. They are the keepers, he said. Not all wisdom is written in ink or carved in stone. Some is bound to the souls of those who guarded it in life. Here they remain watching, measuring the worth of all who enter. If they judge you unfit, these shelves will be as empty as bare walls. They came at last to a great door of bronze, its surface embossed with a labyrinth whose pathways shifted as the torchlight moved. At the center was the image of an eye, its iris made from a disk of meteorite. This is the hall of the sealed manuscripts, the elder said. Within are the texts that speak of beginnings and endings. To open it is to see the world as it truly is, stripped of the illusions that cradle the common mind. But beware, what you learn here will bind you to the mysteries forever. There is no return to the life you knew. The initiate stepped forward. The labyrinth upon the door began to move, its pathways aligning in silence, until the eye at its center dilated. With a sound like a deep breath, the door opened inward. Beyond it lay a chamber lit not by flame, but by a soft, sourceless light. Upon a single pedestal rested a codex bound in black leather, its cover embossed with a symbol that was both a serpent and a circle of stars. It pulsed faintly, like a living heart. The elder stepped aside. It will speak only to you. The initiate approached the pedestal, each step sounding impossibly loud in the silence. The codex seemed to breathe in slow rhythm, its cover warm to the touch, as if the leather had never known death. The moment their fingers brushed it, the chamber dimmed, and the elder's form faded into shadow. The codex opened itself. No hand turned its pages, each leaf turned as though caught in an unseen wind. The writing upon them was not ink, but light shifting between symbols, images, and visions. At first, the initiate saw maps not of Earth, as it is known, but of a world that shimmered with many layers. Mountains whose peaks glowed like embers, oceans of liquid silver, cities suspended in the air like constellations brought down to earth. The elder's voice was gone, replaced by something deeper, a voice that was not a sound at all, but a vibration that hemmed within every cell of the body. It spoke without words. This is the world as it was before the fall. The pages shifted, revealing an age when the mysteries were not hidden. Temples rose in open sunlight, and the stars were studied not for navigation alone but as letters in the divine script. Humanity walked among beings whose forms wove light and matter together, the architects of both time and destiny. The initiate felt a pang of longing, a memory that was not theirs yet lived within them. Then came the change. The visions darkened. Towers crumbled into dust, oceans swelled to swallow entire lands, and the sky dimmed as if a great shadow passed between earth and sun. The voice returned, vibrating with gravity. The veil was drawn, and the gates were sealed. The initiate saw the founders of the mystery schools, figures draped in the mantles of priests, scholars, and seers, gathering fragments of knowledge, hiding them in temples beneath mountains. Within the patterns of stories and myths, they encoded the laws of reality in architecture, in music, in symbols carved into stone. They knew that one day seekers would return and the pattern would awaken again. The pages turned faster. Now they revealed the other half of the truth, the forbidden prophecy. It spoke of cycles, of the great year turning toward its next conjunction, when the veil would thin, but it carried a warning. When the gates opened, what returned would not be only wisdom. That which had been exiled would seek passage as well. The initiate's vision blurred as the codex flared with light, branding the serpentine star's symbol into their mind. The voice spoke once more. You are the key and the lock. The book closed with a sound like the sealing of stone. The chamber brightened, and the elder stood before them again, as though he had never moved. His eyes searched theirs, not for doubt, but for the transformation he knew had taken place. You have read what few in this age have seen, he said. Now you must decide whether to bear it. The torchlight flickered, and somewhere deep in the temple a hidden mechanism stirred, as though the temple itself awaited the choice. The silence after the elder's words was absolute. Even the flicker of the torches seemed to still, as though the entire temple held its breath. The initiate felt the weight of the codex's visions pressing upon them, an inheritance vast enough to crush or to crown. The elder stepped aside, revealing a narrow stair spiraling downward into darkness. The last chamber waits, he said. It is not a place I may enter with you. What happens there will bind you to the mysteries or release you from them forever. The initiate descended. Each step sank deeper into shadow until no light remained, yet their feet found the way. Guided by something that was neither sight nor touch, at last, they emerged into a vast cavern whose ceiling was a dome of pure night. But this night was alive. The stars above them moved, constellations shifting in slow spirals, their light falling in silvery shafts that formed a great geometric pattern on the floor. At the center stood a single object, a mirror of flawless obsidian taller than a man, framed in a border of gold so pure it seemed to emit its own faint glow. No reflection met the initiate's gaze instead. The surface shimmered like the skin of deep water. The voice from the codex returned, resonating. In the marrow, step through, and you will no longer be the one who entered this place. The initiate understood. This was the true initiation, not the tests, not the knowledge, not even the revelations of the prophecy. The mystery schools existed for this moment alone, the dissolution of the self into the greater whole. They stepped forward, the mirror's surface rippled, and cold fire washed over their skin. Images bloomed in the depths, faces of those who had walked this path before, stretching back beyond history. Each offered neither guidance nor warning, only presence. The initiate's final breath, as they knew themselves, was taken in that moment. They stepped through for an instant. There was nothing but light that was not illumination but awareness itself. They saw the pattern in its fullness, the weave of all lives and all worlds, the rise and fall of civilizations like the inhaling and exhaling of a single eternal breath. The stars above were not distant, they were within, each a living fire of consciousness. When the light faded, they stood once more in the elder's presence, though everything was changed. The elder inclined his head in recognition, not as a teacher to a student, but as one initiate to another. You have crossed the final threshold, he said. From this moment, the gates of the mystery are open to you. Guard them well, for in your keeping lies not only your fate, but the fate of all who will come after. Somewhere far above, in the world of sunlight and cities, life continued as it always had. But beneath the skin of the ordinary, the pattern shifted, and the initiate, no longer an outsider, but now a keeper, felt its movement in every breath. The temple doors would one day close again, but the mystery was awake, and it was watching.